thank you so much for checking out the Sportsline podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, whether it's an opinion, water cooler conversation, or just a hardcore hot take, we love to debate sports. It's Monday, September the 23rd, which is the perfect day for a little backseat driving. Let's bring in good friend of the show and host and producer of the fifth quarter, Rick Zamperin, for a little Sportsline Square-Off, which I know you are a little familiar with.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, this is a great time for sports, is it not? Everything's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, NFL's just kind of get going. Baseball's playoffs starting to get going. Hockey's starting to, okay, here we're back, you know. Basketball, before you know it's going to be back on. Obviously, the Ticats are trying to make a run. It is an exciting time to be a sports fan.
It really is. And thinking when you kind of localize it, too, I think there's some other things going on as well, too. The CFL, Forge FC, clinching first place as well, too. We could even break it out to the fact that now the WNBA has become such a hot property right now that people are watching playoff games as well, too.
Bulldogs getting going.
Bulldogs get going right now. I mean, again, I just don't know where the viewing is going to go to, because we only have so much time in terms of as a sports consumer. I can only lock in so much. EPL, F1 going on. It's been an unbelievable year. And as I said, I don't know if you're a fan of multiple sports like you and I are. It's tough.
Do you like this time of the year better than the spring? Because the spring we have NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, baseball's getting going. Football's kind of done from an NFL perspective, not quite starting for the CFL. What March Madness?
This is a great question. I actually think this is busier. I think this is busier right now because you got this other stuff going on. Like I said, I threw in some other things there too. What about the President's Cup? Like all of a sudden, and it's in Canada this year, and like the golf silly season that's on, and all of a sudden we have to kind of, I can't remember the Procore Championship, which I had never heard of, but kind of have to focus it because Mackenzie Hughes is in fourth place, right? So it's like, I feel like there's just so much going on. I feel like things are narrowed down a little bit, too, because it is the postseason in hockey and basketball. Less teams, more important games, but less teams and less other things going on. And baseball hasn't started yet, but, I mean, and baseball in the beginning, to me, it's like it means nothing.
Yes. Once you get to August, then wake me up. Right?
Exactly, right? But what I want to wake you up with right now is a Sportsline Square-Off, and there are all kinds of things to talk about, folks. Friday night, the Ticats edge the Argonauts. Argos, 33-32. Wow, what a winning kick at the end to improve to 5-9. They dropped Toronto to 7-7. 4 games remain in the regular season. Because of the record and the start that the Ticats have, they're in jeopardy of not making the playoffs. But I'll ask you this 3-game win streak, is it a run to the playoffs or respectability?
I would say it's a run to the playoffs. Let's buckle our chin straps and get going. They got BC, they got Winnipeg, they got Calgary, and they got Ottawa in what might be a meaningless game in the last week of the regular season if Ottawa does clinch and they're resting some guys. This is the run of all runs. The season is in front of the Ticats now. They need some help, obviously. They need Saskatchewan to come back a bit. They need Edmonton to cool off, which they did in their previous game against Winnipeg. So they need some help. Toronto, keep losing. Not so go Argos. And the Ticats could be in the thick of things come the last couple of weeks of the regular season.
I think this is crazy because at no point, even being part of the Ticats audio network a couple of months ago, did I ever expect this to happen. Let's be honest. I think we were all kind of depressed and disappointed in what we were seeing. Players not even playing anywhere close to their potential. It took a couple of coordinators to get fired. A head coach that I think got a little meaner with his players. I think behind the scenes, you're at practice even more than I am. And all of a sudden, it's connected. The lights are going off. It's and all aspects too, special teams, offense and defense as well.
They say the season doesn't begin until Labor Day.
Don't say
that. You got to subscribe to it this year. They were a team that was disheveled heading into their arch rival, big game of the season, Tim Hortons Field, Labor Day Classic, and they beat Toronto again for the second time. And then they beat them a couple of weeks later for the season sweep. This is a team that has somehow, some way in this 3-game winning streak found its game, found its mojo. The offense is playing tremendous. The defense finally, I think, playing the way Chris Jones and I guess Ticats fans always intended them to be, a little more ferocious, get to the quarterback, create some turnovers. And the special teams, I mean, Mark Leggio, 6 for 6 last game, kind of put the cherry on top and how much better this special teams unit is now compared to the first month of the season. It is like night and day.
I know you can't go back, but can you imagine? Think about the home loss to the Rough Riders. Think about even the season opener to the Calgary Stampeders.
Saskatchewan game.
Imagine if they had just won a couple of those games that, I'll even go, we talk about this 3-game win streak. In kind of ways, it's almost like a 4-game win streak to me because I thought they played real well in the most hostile place to play in Winnipeg, and they should have beaten the Blue Bombers in that game prior to the beginning of the win streak, but that's a loss regardless. But it's fun to watch. I mean, again, you and I both deal with the Ticats public, the fandom. Me so much in the stadium, especially in the home games, and the faces I get when the game is over, earlier in the season, like people just not even saying anything, just shaking their heads, looking straight at me, and I can't avoid it, right? Yeah. They're shaking their heads, or Bubs, what happened? Yeah. What happened? Why do we keep doing this time and time again? And now everyone's on the bandwagon, Rick.
Well, they were shaking your head at you and not saying much. They were saying a lot to me on the 5th quarter because they were letting it rip. I mean, they were not happy. And to a certain extent, they still are because it's almost a coulda, woulda, shoulda. And especially if they fall a game or two short, it was, that game against Ottawa in which they allow a touchdown in the last minute of the game. Even, previous to this 3-game win streak in Winnipeg, they played so well. Yep. And at the very end, Zach Caleros musters up enough of his championship pedigree to, stir the Bombers to a victory. The game earlier in the season against the Rough Riders probably should have been a win, but somehow, some way, the Ticats let that one slip through their fingers. This is a team that, over the stretch of the year, has been a disappointment when you consider, what we expected them to be. But now that they're in the winning way, they got the mojo going. We got the Boveralls, Bo Levi Mitchell's overalls, and how this has somehow, some way, gotten this team to just up its game in all facets of the game. And fans are responding. They're happy. This is the Ticats team that they envisioned.
And that's exactly where I was going with you on this. I mean, the people that you're talking to, and again, probably on the 5th quarter, the most passionate fan base in the Canadian Football League. What are they still on alert? Or are they still kind of like, well, I'm still feeling this out? Or are they all in?
I think most of them are all in. You get some where it's like, you know what, they're going to fall short, right? This is what the Ticats do. They give us, hope, and then they disappoint us in the end. Very, very similar to what the Maple Leafs do each and every year. But there are a lot of fans that I've talked to on the 5th quarter that they're all in. They're thinking this team has what it takes. Looking at the schedule ahead, looking at, the other teams that they have to leapfrog, either Toronto, Saskatchewan, or Edmonton if they're doing the crossover route, and they envision a path that this team can make the playoffs. Now, again, it's not going to be easy. 4 games left. There are 4 points back of either Toronto or crossing over into the West. So they got some work to do, and it begins this weekend in BC. That's a huge game.
Final thing. What do you think is the easier route? Going the back door with the crossover, or do you think Toronto because Toronto to me are inconsistent.
Yeah, you know what? It's as strange as it sounds. This was a team, this team that I'm talking about, the Argos, were 16-2 last year. Now, again, they didn't have Chad Kelly for the first half of the season, and we know why. But I think the easier path is to catch the Argonauts. You have the season series. All you have to do basically is tie them in the standings. The Ticats need 1 more point than either Saskatchewan or Edmonton, or maybe Calgary if they make an incredible run down the stretch. So you just got to tie Toronto for 3rd, and you're in the playoffs. I think that's the much easier route. Edmonton plays Toronto coming up. The Argos, I think, have a much tougher schedule compared to the Rough Riders and the Elks. I think Toronto's the team to catch.
What was hilarious was watching the Argonauts fold the way they did. The fact that they left too much time on the clock and the way Bo was slinging the football, I'm like, I think they can, all they need is a field goal here. Mm-hmm. Like, it's crazy to think. This is the thing with the Tiger Cats. The last time they played the Lions here in Hamilton, it was maybe the low point of the season.
Yeah.
Edmonton, maybe worst home games ever. Like just by halftime. But in fact, by the first quarter, the game was over. I don't think that's going to happen out in Vancouver on Friday night. I just don't see it happening. I think the Ticats will certainly give them their best shot.
Yeah, I think, you know what, BC, as great as they are in terms of individual talent, I'm not sure they're playing like a team. You know, they have probably maybe the two best quarterbacks in the league on the same team. Only one of them can start, obviously. Bringing in Matthew Betts, yeah, he's made an impact, but hasn't really, revitalized that defense. I think this is a winnable game. I know it's tough. It's on the road. You're traveling 3 time zones. BC's never an easy place to play. But the way this Ticats team's playing, I'm not going to say that they can't win. This is a winnable game.
I'm not in the locker room, but I think by my observations, I think that BC Lions locker room is fractured. And let me tell you why. For all the amazing things that Nathan Rourke did in 2022, he's still a little hit and miss right now in the Canadian Football League in 2024. There's only one receiver, one person on offense of the specialty guys, offense in terms of running backs and wide receivers that were on that roster when he was here throwing the ball over the place in 2022. If I'm any of those other wide receivers that never played with Nathan Rourke, and I'm sure they all understand, well, yeah, this guy was unbelievable in 2022, revitalized the franchise, he's important. Yes, I understand why he's the highest paid, but they probably get all of that. But at the end of the day, those guys know, and I'm talking about especially the wide receivers, Vernon Adams is my guy.
Right.
That's the guy that we got off to the hot start with. That's the guy that was flying all the wide receivers in for practice during the offseason. That's the guy that's built a relationship with me, not only this season, but last season as well, too. I think there's some, and the coach has already said, Rick Campbell said that Nathan Rourke is going to be the starter for Friday night. I wonder about the locker room there.
Yeah, let's not forget the pressure that they're hosting the Grey Cup too. And this is a team that I think out of the gate was one of the teams expected to play in the Grey Cup. That pressure, now that we're in crunch time, heading down to the stretch drive of the season, I think it might be starting to mount. This weekend's game is going to be very interesting.
Tiger Cats quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell leads the CFL in passing yards, passing touchdowns, attempts, completions of 30 yards and over, and interceptions with 13. Is he the CFL MOP?
He should be in the conversation for sure. You look at some of the other star players around the league. Cody Fajardo comes to mind. Montreal has been an outstanding player. Maybe Drew Brown is in that conversation, and it's going to be a quarterback, right? This is always a quarterback kind of award, unless another skill position has an outstanding, season, whether it's a receiver or running back, or maybe even a linebacker from time to time. But I think you got to look at the quarterbacks, and everyone out west. It comes with a what if or kind of a but, right? You look at Edmonton, Trey Ford and McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Two guys that have kind of been in and out of the lineup. Zach Caleros, super slow start, although his team is now starting to win. Saskatchewan Roughriders and Trevor Harris. BC, we just kind of had that conversation. Vernon Adams may be the favorite out of the gate, but he's really not even playing. And I don't think you can put Nathan Rourke in that conversation. So you look at the East, really no one from Toronto. Cameron Dukes had a solid start, but then kind of fade. Chad Kelly doesn't have enough on the resume. Bo Levi Mitchell is probably the guy, right? He leads in all these categories. Yeah, he doesn't have the wins that the other teams have, but this is a team game. And individually, most outstanding, Bo's got to be in the conversation.
I think, and that's the thing, but I think he's going to be held back by the wins. Now, this run and how it ends up may be huge in the way that they can't deny Bo an MOP, at least nomination, if they continue to win like this. Because you're right, even the guys you brought up. Boy, Cody Fajardo has missed a lot of time with injury, and boy, it could be argued that Davis Alexander stepped in there and played better than he was. Right? That's a real discussion. Drew Brown to me is certainly not it. Like I don't see it. I'm wondering about Ottawa right now. I think there's some interesting things going on in that locker room as well too, and that head coach. And I don't know. I think only one time Solomon Ilominian, I believe, it's gone to a defensive player.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's like this weird year where there's not one guy, because generally there is one or two guys that you're like, yeah,
slam dunk.
They're the guy.
Yeah.
The only person I can think of that will put up maybe not record numbers like he did in the past, but good enough because Winnipeg have turned things around. It won't be Zach Collaros. I think he's still struggling. I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are winning because of defense and Brady Oliveira. And that's the only guy I can think of there. Say, okay, well, you look at his numbers last year. He was MOP, and it's like, not. But who else is gonna like? It's so slim right now. Right. There are so little numbers of people that are having outstanding years. Even the leading interceptors have 6 interceptions. Yeah, that's not an MOP worthy.
Let me be the anti-Brady Oliveira and a heck of a player and well deserving of the award last year. But he has 2 touchdowns, and those 2 touchdowns came in the last game. So. Is he the most outstanding player? Yeah, he's got a bunch of yards. So does William Stanback, and he's got a few more touchdowns than Brady Oliveira. But I think it's always going to go to a quarterback, and I think Bo, when you look at all these quarterbacks that we're talking about, throw in Jake Mayer, who's not even in the running, but is having a better season than him as well. But Bo, for MOP, has a last place team ever had an MOP? I'm not sure.
We'd have to call the CFL, and because I don't know if their stats can tell us that. No offense, CFL. We're gonna have to do some research on our own, Rick. On that one.
But I mean, and let's play it the other way. What if the Ticats did not have Bo Levi Mitchell and Taylor Powell, who's been injured? Really hasn't done much this season, and a guy who's in his sophomore season still learning the league, and I think he would probably admit to that. Talia Tungavaloa, not even in the running. Where would this team be without Bo Levi Mitchell? Nowhere near the win-loss or the win stat that they have right now. Might be a 2-win team.
Yeah, really, it's when you really dig in the numbers, and it's like, okay, he threw 13 interceptions. Well, Zach Collaros has thrown 13 interceptions as well too, but the amount of times in the Scott Milanovich offense, I believe that Bo has thrown the ball maybe 35 to 40 times more than the next guy. The ball's up in the air right now. Like, this is a passing team, whether it's 30-yard plus completions, which he leads, or just dump offs to the running back. I mean, has it been his fault? I'm not sure, because he did get benched. But I just don't think 13 interceptions is a lot, considering you've put up the ball, I think, 435 times. Yeah.
Since his benching, too. Like, Mitchell has been outstanding. Probably, and no word of a lie here, probably the best quarterback in the CFL since he was benched.
Oh, absolutely.
3 wins in a row.
Hands down.
2 touchdowns a game or 1 a game, 300-plus yards every game. Big play, clutch plays, big first-down runs. He's been the best quarterback in the last 3-4 weeks.
And would you not say, and this is just a personal thing, when you watch him, whether it's live at practice or on the game, that drive to get them into field, like, he looks like the leader to me.
Yeah.
Like, he's exuding leadership, and I think the team are feeding off it.
Absolutely. Here's a veteran guy who knows what to do, how to do it, when to do it, why it has to be done, and guys are rallying, and have for the last number of weeks rallied around Bo Levi, and it's a much different looking team, and it's a team that has some spirit, some character, some mojo. We could not say that of this team a few weeks ago.
From a team that's inspired to a team that Blue Jays are 73 and 83. They have series versus the Red Sox and the Marlins remaining. Rick, I'm not sure what your expectations were in April, in the middle of April when this season started. Where did this all go wrong?
Probably back in April. I mean, my expectations were this was going to be a third-place team, right? And challenging for a playoff spot. You have the Yankees and the Orioles, the class of the division, and I think Toronto had enough, at least on paper, to be that third-place team. Great pitching staff, and they proved that last year. Some solid hitting. That lineup was still very much similar to last year going into this season. So I didn't really expect that much different. If they remained healthy, they should produce as they did, both offensively and from a pitching standpoint. And it just did not materialize. I mean, apart from a red-hot stretch from Vladimir Guerrero in the heat of the summer, this team has been a giant disappointment. I mean, a last-place outfit that, when you look at the bullpen in particular, a few position players, you're thinking, where is this team going to go, not only in this offseason, but for the next few years? There's a lot of question marks.
And you're right about the starts for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We're talking about, actually, like, there were conversations of trading Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Yeah. It's unbelievable. But since the All-Star break, he's been arguably the greatest player, other than Shohei Ohtani, the best player in the league. And he's been so good that his numbers have normalized to what we would expect of him, and maybe in terms of his batting average exceeded what we expected. The Bo Bichette has been a big disaster because he's also looked at as one of the leaders and a guy that's going to drive the offense. But even when he was healthy earlier in the year, struggled. I mean, his season's over right now. I believe 4 home runs, well off his pace. He hit 306 last year, 225. He's that important to this team. You talked about the bullpen. What a disaster that's been.
Tire fire.
Like from the very beginning, from the time Romano went down, it just trickled down. And guys that were supposed to be, Chad Green's supposed to be the 8th inning guy. He turns into the 9th inning guy. Then he gets hurt. Look, everyone's going to throw Ross Atkins under the bus and Shapiro. That's the easy thing to do. But I also say this, and in their defense, they don't stand there and hit home runs. They don't strike out people. I think there's a lot of underachievers on this team, and they got to take a real hard look, Rick, at what they bring back next year. There's not a lot of young players, but maybe the Jays fans just have to suffer for a couple of years and just go young.
It might be, or they go the other way. Or there's 3 ways to go about doing this. Number 1, they dip into free agency large, try to fix the bullpen, try to get that lineup back to hitting a lot of home runs and driving in a lot of runs. Option number 2 is they don't do much. They tinker here and there, figuring not everyone's going to have a down year again next year. Like, this thing is going to right itself. And option number 3, as you mentioned it, they kind of go young. Whether that's trading away some guys or maybe not re-signing guys and, bringing up a few players from the minor leagues, that might be an option. I think they're going to at least try at the winter meetings especially, to revamp that bullpen through free agency and see if they can bring in some big arms to kind of lock it down. But they need a lot more consistency, and they need guys to, prove that they belong with this team.
The thing that worries me about going to try and fix the bullpen is that by nature, relievers are volatile.
Yeah.
And you have, for good ones, or even semi-good ones, you got to pay dollar bill, right? And you just don't know if that guy's going to be right that year or how healthy he's going to be. That is the nature of that position. I can think of guys that have been good lasting over the years, but they've been up and down. Greg Kimbrell, right? He's a guy that has been fantastic over the years when you look at his cumulative career numbers. But look at his seasons. Up, down, traded, up, down with the same team. I'm concerned with that. And the starting position, those guys like Gausman get another year older.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Bassett, Jose Barrios, all these guys are a little bit older, but I think they can still get it done. You look at Chris Sale, who a lot of people were kind of writing off, thinking, this guy's just not going to be the same. He's now winning the Triple Crown in the National League, in the major leagues for strikeout wins and ERA, and a guy who can still get it done. Now, a different level of pitcher. I mean, he's the elite of the elite, but still, if you're entering your 30s and all these guys kind of are in there, can they still get it done? Yeah, but on a consistent basis, that is the question. Now you need some depth, and now you need your bullpen to step up when those guys don't get to the 5th or 6th innings. So, they're going to have to dig down deep, and it's probably a mix. Tinker a little bit, get into free agency, bring some guys up from the minors, and cross your fingers, and hopefully it works. Now, whether that's a recipe for success, I don't know, but they need their star players to be star players throughout the year.
Last question on this. There's a president and there's a general manager. A lot of people are calling for the head of the general manager especially.
Right.
A lot of people, if they could get rid of both of them. But you know what? You just can't fire people. You gotta have a plan. What's your plan?
Yeah.
When people tell me, you get rid of these guys. Well, what's your plan? Who's out there? Okay, first of all, there's that. But do you trust Ross Atkins? Because I think Shapiro was fine. The president's fine. Do you trust Ross Atkins to make these decisions going forward for the future of the Blue Jays?
Well, I think you have to look at the track record to look at what he's done. I think over the last number of years, the pitching staff, at least the starting rotation, has been an improvement over what it was, say, just 5 years ago. Unfortunately, trading Yusei Kikuchi, who's now, 9-0 with the Astros?
I know.
Did they really have to do that? They probably could have signed him to an extension, but thought, let's, stock up the cupboards, and that's what you have to do from time to time. But The Dalton Varsho trade, I think they got hosed a little bit on that, trading away 2 position players who are, pretty solid components of Arizona's lineup. The bullpen has been a disaster. I think if you're a Jays fan, you want both guys out. I think if you're a baseball purist or a guy who wants to see this team as a whole be better, I think you got to change. If anything, you got to change the general manager. I think you need a new direction. You need a new belief system there. The other thing I'll say is, I think these guys are tied, right? Like Shapiro and Atkins kind of tied to the hip. So if you get rid of one, you might be forced to get rid of them both. And that's a bigger question.
In his first game with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Max Pacioretty? What?
Max Pacioretty?
Max Pacioretty? Where did he come from? Okay, folks, if you didn't know, he signed a PTO, which is a professional tryout agreement. In his first game against the Senators, Leafs lose 6-5. Anyway, Max Pack scores 2 goals, 1 assist. He had 6 shots on goal, 3 hits, +2, and he played 15 minutes and 35 seconds on a line with Tavares and some guy by the name of Gorbeshkin that we know we're going to learn a lot about, apparently, because he's pretty good. What are your thoughts on Max Pacioretty as a Leaf?
Well, it's a bit strange knowing that he's been, he was with the Habs. He was a Hamilton Bulldog, AHL Hamilton Bulldog many, many years ago, and a great player for the Habs, perennial 30-goal scorer, heart and soul of the team. He goes to Vegas. He's kind of bounced around. He's had some terrible injury history, including, a couple of severe Achilles injuries. But this is, according to him, for the first time in a long time, he is healthy. He's had a healthy summer. Instead of rehabbing, he's been training and getting ready for the season. An experienced veteran guy, a guy who's been in long playoff runs. I think it's a good addition. I mean, he's not going to cost you much, I don't think, on a PTO. When it comes to the cap, though, if they want to retain him, the Leafs are going to have to get a little, creative with their salary, because right now they'd be over the salary cap if they did add him. So they're going to have to delete or do something with their roster. But when you bring in a guy of his caliber, a nice, leadership, quality. Him and Ryan Reeves go back to their Vegas days, so they have a connection there. I think he's on a solid line. If he's going to be on the line with Tavares, it's a good place to have him. And it's one preseason game, but I like what he sees. He's a big guy, not very physical, but crafty around the net, good with deflections, seems to be all in on wearing the blue and white.
Can't believe you're saying that. Like, listen to you brag about Max Pacioretty.
And he's wearing number 67.
He's wearing, this is all wrong. And Leaf fans should be just dismayed. This is like Plekanec wearing a Maple Leaf jersey. It's all
very
wrong.
Similar. It's very similar.
It's all wrong. And what they need another veteran presence. They need another guy that's slow, like Tavares. I don't understand this signing. And I know it's low risk because it's a PTO.
Yeah.
But you do know, because he's going to demand more than the veteran minimum, I believe, if they do decide to sign him to some type of contract. He has a history of injuries, and as you said, some of them severe, with a double, with back-to-back years with Achilles injuries and season enders at that too. This goes back to the Blue Jay thing to me a little bit. There's no one in the system. There's no young guys, sprightly guys that are looking to impress that you want. If he was a defenseman and you want that rock-solid veteran guy, like a Muzzin was a number of years ago, gave you everything he got,
and then got hurt.
Or even
Max Pacioretty to me is a guy. He's going to replace a guy like a Nick Robertson, who has already vocally said he wants out. Yeah, he signed his 1-year deal, but he could be on the way out. He could be one of the guys that's
because he treated him like crap.
Well, yeah, he doesn't play a complete game at this point of his career, and I think that's understandable. And I think Pacioretty is a little more responsible in his end. Let's not forget, the Leafs have a new head coach. Craig Berube wants his team to be more physical, tougher to play against, more responsible in their end. Now, we didn't see it last night for sure.
6-5.
Preseason, yeah, they got a long way to go. Yeah. And I'm still questioning whether they have the right pieces to play the way Berube plays. But I think Pacioretty gives you a little bit of that compared to some of the younger guys that they do have.
Stay tuned, folks. A lot of time for hockey talk.
Absolutely.
Following a bye week to replace injured quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins did really nothing. They signed a guy by the name of Tim Boyle. Have you ever met Tim Boyle? I think he's my neighbor, right? They handed the starting duties to Skylar Thompson, who was the backup, and he ended up getting hurt in Sunday's loss in Seattle. What are the Dolphins going to do now? And the reason why I say this, and I think it's such a big deal, because, one, there's a lot of people that believe that the Miami Dolphins were a good candidate to win the AFC East and battle the likes of the Bills and the Jets. There's no guarantee that when he comes off IR, if he comes off IR, that Tua Tagovailoa will be ready to play in a month.
Right.
Like, the season is hanging on the quarterback position in Miami. And basically, they did nothing. Your thoughts? This is your team. Have your say.
They're in trouble. They're in a whole heap of trouble. I did not expect this team to be anywhere near last place. And with all due respect to New England, Miami might be a last place team if they don't fix their quarterback situation. Because Tim Boyle's not the answer. Snoop Huntley's not the answer, although he might be the next guy in line to give this offense a little bit of a jolt. The defense has been exposed in a couple of the games this season. This is a team in trouble. When you don't have your number one quarterback and now your number two has gone down, it is a tire fire. It's, where is the panic button? Because that has to be not only pressed but smashed with a sledgehammer. Without Tua, this offense is completely in disarray. We saw that yesterday in Seattle. And Skylar Thompson, who's had starts in this league, looked like a fish out of water. Could not do anything or anything.
How many yards passing did he have in the first quarter?
It was probably minus something. It was so bad. This team needs a guy like Tua. It's a timing offense, right? 3-step drop back, couple of seconds in the pocket, the ball's out. We weren't seeing that yesterday and probably won't see that into the future. Even though that Tyreek Hill said, wow, Tim Boyle was great in the huddle. He's got a lot of respect for him. He liked what he heard. I think when it comes to on-field execution, there's another level you have to get to, and I'm not sure. I have my doubts that Boyle or even Huntley can get to that level.
Why didn't they go get an experienced veteran? Look what we just saw. I don't know how long this is going to last, but I will say, look what happened in Carolina. Andy Dalton,
3 TDs.
Are you kidding me? No picks, 306. Yeah. To me, and I said this, Chantel, one of our directors, who's a huge Dolphins fan, and I know she didn't like it. There's so many Dolphin fans I know, and I said it to all of you guys. Yeah. I said, go out and get Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah,
go get Ryan Tannehill. And I know a lot of people don't like Ryan Tannehill because he was underachiever. I think maybe that's the word I'll use for him with the Miami Dolphins. I thought he had some decent years with the Titans. He would know, or at least be recognized with the offense. And he's a guy that could still, as you said, throw the timing pattern, and he's still got a good enough arm, I think, to go over the top to this. You got two of the fastest receivers in the league.
Yeah, I would say this for Tannehill. I did like him in his previous iteration with the Dolphins, and I would be a fan of him coming back. He would have many more weapons on the field this time around as he did, previous, with Hill and Waddle and Achane in the backfield. And when Mostert gets hurt, now you're talking about an offense that can score some points, which did score a lot of points last year. From what I've heard, Ryan Tannehill wants to be a starter long-term in the NFL. And if I'm Ryan Tannehill, I'm thinking, here's an opportunity for at least 3 games to get in, and maybe longer. Pad your bank account, pile up some wins, make some great memories, make those reconnections. I'd be all in on Ryan Tannehill.
Do you think Tua is coming back this year?
I do. And I think he's coming back because I think he wants to come back. From a health standpoint, I have no idea where he is, other than I know he went to Disney World, with a couple of teammates, a couple of days after the Buffalo game.
What, was he riding rides?
I don't know. Apparently he was there with Jonnu Smith and a couple of other players, and they were having fun. I guess, I don't know, maybe just to take his mind off what happened, but he was healthy enough to do that. So I think he's healthy enough. He was healthy enough to travel to Seattle. He was there on the sideline. But when it comes to being, bounced around by 300, 250-pound, monsters on the D-line, that's another thing. That's not Disney World. That is like, Nightmare Mountain, whatever. I think he'll come back. I don't know when he'll come back, and whether it's after this 4-game stint on the IR or maybe mid-season, maybe after the bye week in a few weeks' time. I don't know. I'd love to see him back, but only if he's 100% healthy. The worst thing we can have is him come back and it happens again.
Huntley's not the answer either. That guy can barely throw.
Yeah.
He's a great athlete. He can run around
It's going to be a Wildcat-type offense if he's in.
Yeah, I would think so, and I don't think that suits your team. Nearly 26 years after dropping his first slam dunk in Toronto, Vince Carter will become the first Raptors player to have his jersey go into the rafters. That was just announced like just hours ago since we started taping this. And I say this out of due respect to the man because there are such divided feelings for Vince Carter. Is making him the first Raptor to go up in the rafters fair or foul?
I say absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. When you think of the Toronto Raptors, how many players how many players jump out right off the hop? You know, Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard, Vince Carter. That's probably the top three. That's your Mount Rushmore right there. And there's a debate as to whether it's DeMar DeRozan or, someone else who would make that, that fourth kind of face on the Mount Rushmore. Vince Carter put the Raptors on the map. The All-Star Game slam dunk competition, so many points, so many epic moments. Yeah, they didn't get to where they wanted to go as a franchise, but he was the face of the franchise and the face really of a country. And I know the Vancouver Grizzlies were there before they went to Memphis. Vinsanity and Vince Carter put the Raptors on the map, and I think this is high time that the Raptors make this decision, make him the first to do it.
I'm all over this. I think this is well deserved. I'm happy to I hope I'm there. I think I'll be on my feet. I think it was amazing. I have nothing but good memories of Vince. Mm-hmm. The memories, because remember, not every game was televised back in the day when Vince was on. How we felt as Canadians and fans of basketball players when everyone was hockey fans, when the Raptors started to make their move and to be on NBC. Do you remember how amazing that was? What a big deal that was for the Raptors to be on national TV in the United States. And because Vince Carter was so electrifying, such a fun player to watch, a productive player, a guy that went to North Carolina, the same school that Michael Jordan went to, that this was a huge interest. And the Raptors became a playoff team for the first time in their existence, which is short, 30 years. When Vince was there. Yeah. Did it end well? And this is where I'll slip to guys like, our very own Tim Bolin here. It's right now he's vomiting, right? He can't stand this right now because that's the way he feels. And he's right. Hey, that's his feelings. And he's not the only one. A lot of people didn't like the way he left the organization. The fact that he started, telling players, hey, we're going to run this. Like he wanted out of town. Like that's plain and simple. And it was not a good ending. Yeah. In fact, it was a horrible divorce. And the organization that the Raptors had at the time in terms of general manager, it was a mess. And the trade was a mess. The Raptors suffered for years as a bad team because of the way he left this organization. Yeah. But you know what? That's why I said 26 years later, right? And I think we got to move on. I think we live to even when you ask Vince to this day, and I'm not talking about Canadian publications, when he's talking to all the American hotshots, the way he talks about Toronto, the way he talks about his days as a Raptors, and we going into the Hall of Fame as a Raptor, right? You can't deny him this. I think this is a special moment. I could argue DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry deserve to be up there. I think they do,
and they should. Yeah,
but they're still playing. Yeah, they're still playing.
Think about this too. Vince Carter spurred a moment in this country with the Slam Dunk Championship and with all the exploits on the court. But how many kids watching Vince Carter game in and game out said, I want to be him. I want to be like that. And either got into basketball or got better at basketball because they were inspired by what Carter brought to the arena. And I think it's such a great legacy that he had in the NBA that the New Jersey Nets, said, we're going to retire your number. And I think a little bit about, did that force the Raptors' hand to act a little quicker than maybe they would have hoped? I don't know, but I think this is well-deserved.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I remember the guy played like 3 generations. He played forever. He was still a productive player right down to the very end. Certainly not the slam dunker that he was. But and that's another, the slam dunking. Like you brought up the 2000 slam dunk contest, which to this day, and we're talking about Michael Jordan.
Dominic Wilkins.
We're talking about Dominic Wilkins. We're talking about Dr. J. Yeah. We're talking about Spud Webb.
Yes.
We're talking about some of the greatest stories in NBA slam dunk all-star history. And the 2000 all-star game in Oakland will wipe them all clean. Wipe them all clean. You remember Shaq with like going,
yeah, couldn't believe his eyes. Yeah.
It was special and it was great, and I think we should all celebrate it. All right. Bell, Rogers, Sale, MLSE. Okay, so Rogers has now purchased Bell, and they own the Raptors, the Maple Leafs, Toronto FC, the Argonauts, and several other holdings. This is a big deal. Rogers have now become the biggest the biggest conglomerate to own this many sports teams in North America. Yeah. What, in the end of the day, will this mean for the sports consumers, Rick Zamperin?
That's a big unknown. I have my thoughts in terms of, what this means in terms of how we consume sports, because I think, the broadcasting of these games might be tweaked. And I say that thinking, will the new iteration of MLSE or Rogers say, all right, you want to watch some Leafs or Raptors or Blue Jays or TFC or Argos, or you're going to have to pay a premium. You're going to have to buy a Rogers or MLSE subscription. I'm talking years down the road, but this is some of the stuff I've been thinking about. From a hierarchy standpoint, it's going to be interesting, Rogers, the longtime owner of the Blue Jays, where the Jays kind of fit in the totem pole. Leafs are the king of the castle, and they always have been and always will be. Are the Jays number 2 or are the Raptors number 2 in terms of where Rogers kind of spends its resources and, who's getting the more dollars or the more attention? And then you have, sadly, TFC and the Argonauts, which are way down the list. And I think the Argos are way, way down the list. Rogers does not have anything football related in its portfolio. Now it does. But what happens to the Argonauts? And does this fuel the fire from Rogers and those bigwigs in Toronto to someday bring the NFL to their portfolio, which I would think would wipe the Argos off the CFL slate?
I think that's an interesting thought, but I just think that the NFL would never want to be able to be responsible for wiping the CFL away. I don't think they want to be involved in that. I think they want to help the CFL. I often wonder, because of Sportsnet's being there for over a decade, they're wanting their thirst to be number one. If the CFL, which is coming up on a new contract soon, I don't know, Bell selling all these properties means something, that there's some kind of financial issues going on. Right. Like this is MLSE is a huge thing, and that 37% was a controlling interest. That's a big percentage to just get rid of, basically, and say now, okay, we still want to have sports because we have a sports network, but we're willing to buy games off you, Rogers. Like, that was a big decision, right? But you've now lost the power, and you're right. But Sportsnet, I think, has the Sportsnet 360, Sportsnet 1, right, and 4 regional channels. Yeah. If they want to really make their network, I think, something special, they have the ability to put all these games on different channels. Yep. But here's the difference, folks, and this is why it's so important to discuss this from a consumer standpoint. We're going to be paying for everything, right? We're already Maple Leaf fans, and I know you're a huge Maple Leaf fan. I don't even know if you know this. You know that there's this new Amazon Monday Night Hockey, which the Maple Leafs are on 6 times this year. Yeah. So those are games you're going to have to pay for. If you're not subscribing to the Amazon or
video,
like you got to pay for it now.
Luckily, I have it.
Okay, there you go.
But a lot of people don't.
But a lot of people don't, right? And I think that everything is going to become what it is now, right? Let's be honest, the conventional TV right now is slowly being replaced by different companies. Subscription services, Peacock, all this stuff here. Even the National Football League. It's the pie for the National Football League. It used to be just Fox and NBC. No longer. Yeah. It's divided in like 6 different cakes. The cake is divided like 6 different ways, is what I'm trying to say, sorry. If you want to watch the games. And if you just want to watch them all, you got to pay big time to the National Football League.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow in terms of Rogers and its offerings in terms of whether it's the Leafs or the Jays or whatever the case is. But I think one day in the next 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, there's going to come a point where if you want to watch these services, maybe even be sooner than that, to be honest, if you want to watch these games, you want to watch these teams, you want to follow your favorite stars and teams, you have to pay a premium and subscribe to MLSE TV, for example. And now you're going to get all, this whole big package. So it's going to be interesting to see how they cut up that pie.
I mean, I watch soccer. I got to watch FUBU. I got to watch my favorite team. Unfortunately, when they're a Champions League, because they're a Champions League team, I have to have.
Oh, boo-hoo!
I'm spending money all over the place, right? I'm looking at this the other day. This is a quick little story. Like, I got so annoyed by YouTube and the amount of commercials on it that I purchased a YouTube package with no commercials. I'm like, how many more times will I look at my bank account? $13.99, $12.99, $10.99, and I'm like. But that's just the way it is now. And and quickly, one little thing to you about this. What do you think this is going to be in terms, and this is a biggie, this sale on a journalistic sort of standpoint?
Huge. Absolutely. I mean, look at the announcement, right? You had Ron MacLean in the studio with Ed Rogers and Tony Staffieri, the two bigwigs at Rogers. That was the news conference, right? No one in the outside journalistic world could ask questions about these two gentlemen on, why they went all in, what their plan is for the franchise is, and what is the go forward, plan in terms of, fan consumption. The message is going to be controlled, and we're seeing a lot of teams with their own PR departments kind of, this is the message we want to send out. It's imperative that news organizations retain their either broadcast rights or continue to send reporters to practices and games to ask the questions that fans ultimately want answers to. So that's going to be an interesting, step forward to hopefully maintain.
Well, you're certainly seeing that in the Canadian Football League. Again, the Ticats Audio Network. We had Justin Duncan here, who's now working also for the Riders Network as well, too. The teams right now, I mean, Maple Leafs TV and MapleLeafs.com, they have everything as well, too. More so than, I think TSN or Sportsnet nowadays. So, yeah, that's the way this is going. And, boy, yeah, you better open up your pocketbooks. And you're right. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. But, folks, if you want to maybe go back to the old days where, you used to see 3 or 4 games for free on conventional TV, I think it's going back that way eventually at some time. Rick, thank you so much for joining us here. Some great topics to talk about, great opinions and little debates as we like to do here on the Sportsline Square-Off. And good luck to your team because
which one?
Your Dolphins team. Your Leafs team, I'll never say that. But your Dolphins team, just because I thought a lot was expected. I really expected the Bills and the Dolphins to be slugging it out as they have been for the last little while. Yeah. Maybe with both teams getting in the postseason right now. I know there's a lot of people that are high on the Jets. I'm not quite there yet. Yeah. Like, I love, Aaron Rodgers is a great story, and everyone talks about this great Jets defense.
Yeah, I like the D. Survey is still out in terms of how effective Rodgers and the offense is going to be. I like a couple of their pieces. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Rodgers got a great pedigree, but he's now 40, and how much better can they be? I don't know. But as for the Dolphins, yeah, I've kind of thrown in the towel. It's unfortunate, when you're down to QB3, and after week 3, that's a bitter pill to swallow.
Quick thing here. Yeah. Best 3-0 team right now.
Oh, what do we have? We have the Steelers and we have the Vikings.
The Vikings, of course, the Chiefs.
The Bills will be 3-0. Chiefs, yeah. You got to go with the defending champs, right? I know they've been aided from time to time. We saw that last night with the guys in pinstripes. I think they're the best team, but man, like Minnesota, who would have thunk that with Sam Darnold? And the defense is playing unconscious. Yeah. They're in a tough division, but they're playing lights out.
It's surprising to me. Well, my goodness. Anyway, folks, thanks for joining us, Rick.
You got it.
That's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking and debating sports. If you know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, you want to hear from you. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, please comment. We appreciate that. For the wonderful and amazing people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so much, folks. And we'll see you tomorrow.